this evening. Good night, good night, good night. Oh, I'm already on the article. Good night and welcome to the Mindful Life 131. It is the 4th of October. Wow. The year is nearly finished. The 4th of the 10th month. We are already closing in on the Christmas season. We are hearing parang music playing out of radios. The days are getting shorter and the nights are getting cold. We know what this means. And well, one minister said that we must not be baking ham every month, but we are coming along or coming around to the months where baking of ham will be allowed. Well, maybe we might have to ask the permission of our PNM government ministers if we might be permitted to bake a ham for the Christmas season. If it might be allowed, Minister Gonzalez, out of the magnanimity of your heart, would you please allow us to bake a ham as we near this Christmas season? Welcome to the Mindful Live. I'm your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. Someone was asking, where do I get this intelligence from? Well, other than, just boosting the ego a little bit. Thank you very much. But intelligence and knowledge isn't a very difficult thing to get. You just go see where has it and pick it up. Books. You see the books around me. And if you are a student, someone of student age, and you're interested in, getting a little push into this whole knowledge business, getting some interest in finding out things yourself, diving deeper into learning, well, Mindful Education is now offering pod classes, pod learning pods, where you can enter into a homeschool styled atmosphere where our attempt is to make learning a bit more comfortable, a bit more interesting, where your curiosity leads you. It spikes that curious nature in humanity. I believe everyone is curious. Everyone likes to learn. Everyone wants to learn. And by providing the atmosphere for such in Mindful Education, you can do just that. So if you know a student, if you are a student, if you're interested in that, we're offering pod classes starting from preschool pods, lower primary pods, upper primary pods, lower secondary pods, upper secondary pods. If you are interested in such, head over to Instagram, mindful_education, mindful with 2 L's as per usual. And you can follow us there. And the contact information is there. You just hit us up over there, register if you are so interested. We also offer private tuition if you are interested in that for various CXC subjects. Hit us up over there also. All right, so on to the news of the evening. A Peaceful Place asks, do you think Marxist theory will soon occur with the current direction? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by Marxist theory occurring, but Marxism is alive and well all over the Western world. We live in a world where at least a lot of the educated persons inside of the Western world, yes, the mindful weekday lives would continue. The pod classes are separate from that. The pod classes don't go on at 9 o'clock in the night anyway. But yes, a lot of the educated world, a lot of the university, a lot of the tertiary educated people inside of our world, inside of our country, inside of the Western world and Western system, a lot of them are influenced heavily by Marxism. The general idea of Marxism has separated from the original intent to some extent, where the original intent was more of an economic thing, where the society was divided into the classes based on economy, and you had class warfare based on your economic class. Now, Marxism has been abstracted from that to be nearly any kind of warfare, where now you have a style of Marxism in the United States where they don't have the economic classes, they put racial classes into that, where white supremacy is the overclass and you have the POCs as the underclass. Marxism is alive and present, just by the way. Big up, Shad, big up to yourself too. Good night, Jaron VC. I'm viewing this live using my Dell laptop, running on Windows Vista using an Ethernet cord because Wi-Fi too expensive. You are listening to your PNM government ministers. Well done, Mr. Jaron VC. You are finding ways to sacrifice and save if needs be. maybe we could find someone still offering dial-up connection. I wonder what would be the cost of a dial-up connection these days. For those of you who are alive back in those days, if we're talking real sacrifice, us pioneers of the internet, we were out here loading Facebook pages back in 2007. We were loading Facebook pages on dial-up. If you all don't know that struggle, you all don't really know the struggle. And just by the way, the limitations of dial-up wasn't only on the speed. The speed was what it was, and there was nothing you could do about that. Blessed night, Stefan Oliver. The other limitation was they sold that internet back then by the hour. So you could have had a 20-hour package, you could have had a 50-hour package, or if you were really balling, you may have had an unlimited package. Or you had to find someone you know who had an unlimited package and was willing to lend you it to use it a bit. Whew, good times, good times. That's the real struggle. Maybe as a nation, in order to sacrifice, we may have to return to such. Maybe it just might be. All right. So, Miss Kojo, Miss Shamfa Kojo, who was kind of at the head of some of the negative responses to the responses concerning the budget. She had her own response in Parliament where she said several things, and part of what she said was to listen to her entire speech to get the proper context of it. And I am all for that. I am all for that, understanding the proper context of things. It's unkind to purposefully misinterpret someone and not understand clearly what the idea that they are trying to portray to us. That's not kind. So we would try to get a more complete idea right after we see what she has to say in Parliament, because many people were pointing out that she was one guilty of having something like a close to $60,000 phone bill. She is talking about sacrificing, while so quickly $60,000 of taxpayer money had to be spent on a phone bill for her. So let's get into her response to that. I'm streaming live as usual over on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube. If you are viewing this, hit that like button by all means. Allow the algorithm to feel your presence and know that this is some good stuff. Hit the like button. Allow us to know that you like this stuff. If you aren't subscribed to my YouTube channel, there are benefits to that. You can head over to YouTube now or at any point in time in the future and subscribe to Nathan Springer over there. On YouTube, you would be able to see the articles as they scroll by. You would be able to see the lives on repeat if you ever miss any, and also the chats are there, so you could read the chats and it's not sounding like craziness when I'm replying to people inside of the chat. Okay, so let's jump into this article here. Shamfa, $59,000 cell phone bill, unfortunate. Much wastage under Kamala, says Shamfa. Sport and Community Development Minister Shamfa Kojo says the $59,000 telephone bill she racked up because of roaming charges was unfortunate. But the country would never forget the wastage of taxpayers' money under the Kamala Persad-Bissessar-led People's Partnership government. Now, this is one of the most familiar tones taken by the government. By our government, to be honest, by nearly every government. I don't know how much bearing it really has, though. The idea is that when you point out something bad that we do, we revert to pointing out how bad the other people were. Now, I am not even quibbling about the truth or the fact of that matter, because personally, I was alive 2010 to 2015. My memory was functioning. My brain was alert. I knew what happened, and I'm not forgetting that. to remind the country about what happened before as an excuse for what you are doing really doesn't work, because the country already voted out those people. The citizens already did the worst that they can do to these people. If these other people, if the partnership, the UNC, whoever else, indeed stole money from us as a people, the only thing us as a people can do is vote them out. If they are to face consequences by pursuit of the law, then that's on the law enforcement folks. If they are to face consequences by any official organization, well, that's more on the government and their ministers. What do you want us to do? Why are you highlighting these things that we already know? She went on, let's find out what she said. She brought back up the situation where she went to the Bahamas. Richard Glubman says they probably think that they shouldn't talk because of what they did. Okay, I understand that thought, but it doesn't work like that. She brought back up the instance where she went to the Bahamas when she was Minister of Tourism. Kudjo traveled to the Bahamas for 4 days to attend the Caribbean Tourism Organization's Caribbean Travel Marketplace. Her cell phone bill was over $59,000 due to roaming charges. This is Shamfa speaking here, I didn't know that Bahamas was not on the CARICOM Treaty, so therefore they were charging 10 times more. Quite unfortunate. But she, speaking about Kamala, I suppose, forgot to tell us about when her personal assistant or the person on her personal team, now a member, ran up a phone bill and he wasn't even in any political position. She was pointing out these instances where Miss Prasad Bisesa had taken her sister on trips amounting to $800,000. Good night, Mr. Tony the Ambassador. It's been a while, bro. It's been a while. Now, I remember these things. I remember the allegations about Mrs. Prasad Bisesa's sister, that she was taking all about the place on the taxpayers' dime. I remember that well. I remember her personal assistant, who I believe right now might be a member for Princess Town. He was a personal assistant to Kamala Prasad Bisesa. And there were some allegations about some improper usage of money as pertaining to him also. I remember that. My memory works well. But as a country, we already voted out these people. We already voted out these people. I remember all of this. So if we are to speak as a country, like I'm to speak on behalf of the country. Okay, Miss Kojo, you are telling us about these instances of possible theft of our money. We already removed these people from being in charge of our money. Why are you bringing this up again? If you are bringing it up again, Miss Kojo, could you please do something about it? Like, I always wonder, when these politicians always bring up these instances, hey, remember when the other politicians stole your money? Yes, I remember. Now do something about it. If you're not doing anything about it, why do you keep bringing it up to me? Like, imagine that. Imagine you had a friend that you left in charge of some money. Bad idea, but you left one friend in charge of some money. And then they stole that money from you. And another friend who is a police officer who could do something about it keeps only reminding you, hey, remember when George thief your money, boy? Hey, remember when George thief your money? Yes, I remember. I remember it was my money. I remember when they stole my money. Now, what are we going to do about it? Or is it just to keep reminding me, hey, remember you get your money stolen from you? Hey, you remember you get... Thank you very much, AJ. Remember you get your money stolen? Like, what's the purpose? Also, we already voted them out. That's exactly what I'm saying. The country already did the only thing the country can do. We, as the voting members of the public, don't have the authority to launch an investigation into Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and using the flights to fly her sister out. We don't have that authority. The only thing we can do is vote them out. You don't remember me? Well, I am seeing AJ here, and I don't know which AJ necessarily. So maybe if you remind me of who the person is. I'm not seeing your entire profile. I'm just seeing AJ here, so I don't know who I'm talking to necessarily. But yeah, what's the point of reminding us? if you're not going to do anything about it. And that does not make it better about your indiscretions. Good night, SNS Emporium. That does not make it better about your indiscretions. If the other person stole and we got rid of them, you telling us that, you're reminding us that they stole, doesn't make your misuse of money any better. Like, how does that work? Yes. It was unfortunate that I spent $60,000 of your money, but remember, the people before were worse. One of the only reasons that is even a viable strategy remotely is because of the nature of our political system. They know we are trapped in the two-horse race. They know that. So they know the moment I start to look bad, I don't even have to look good. The only thing I have to do is make my opposition, my opponent, look worse than me. So it's the go-to strategy. We are trapped in a two-horse race. You have to stick your hand in one out of these two buckets. One bucket is filled with pig mess, and the other bucket is filled with cow mess. Two buckets filled with manure. And each bucket is trying to convince us that the other bucket is worse. So one bucket being pig manure, the other one being cow manure, you have to stick your hand in one out of the two. Personally, Putin, Mr. Putin over on TikTok there, I will choose the cow also. Anybody who knows anything about animal rearing know if you have to choose between pig dung and cow dung, go with the gobar. Sense. But in this example, I'm just using it as an example here. It's both buckets of mess. They're both buckets of mess. But the moment I look over this bucket and I sniff, and I'm like, wow, this smells like ish. That bucket doesn't need to convince me that it is not manure. That bucket doesn't need to convince me that it is indeed gold. All it has to do is convince me that the other bucket of ish smells worse. So every time I do, agreed, that bucket actually smelling worse than me. That's the main technique. So in Trinidad, nearly no political party needs to go out of their way to convince us that they are a good choice. That's not what they do. They convince us that the other one is the worst choice. That's all they need to do. Just convince us the other is the worst. Rondell Bowen says, I don't know why they just don't fire all them old people who are at the top of all these political parties, because they have all the knowledge how to thief. Let the youths get a chance to create change. I understand what you're saying, but there are several problems in that. Who will fire them? How do you fire them? Political parties are private corporations run by rules that they decide for themselves. As a private corporation, they can make up their own constitution however they wish. So you can't go into the PNM and demand that they fire Rowley. They have a procedure for that. UNC, likewise, you can't go in there and demand that they fire Kamla. There's a procedure for that. So getting the old people at the top fired is a difficult thing. And okay, yes, let's get in new parties, but that's a difficult thing to get in a system like ours also. I spoke about that previously. The nature of our system, it almost always devolves or leans into a two-party race. That's just what happens. It's just the nature of the animal. If you think about it, only one group can win. There's one winner. If in this election the group that I despise the most wins, what that is encouraging me to do is whoever came in second place, I will vote for them next time, because it doesn't matter who I prefer the most. The one I hated the most won. So the person who has the best chance of beating the person I hate the most is the person I would have to vote for. And it almost always ends back up into a two-party race. The reality is that the youths cannot run and win independently, so they're forced to join a party. Precisely. And personally, I am not of the opinion that the youth would automatically be a better choice. I'm not of that opinion. I'm not of the view that any change is going to be better change. We spoke about the French Revolution yesterday when we were speaking about this very same thing, and if you understand the reality of nearly every single political revolution that ever take place, nearly all ended up worse than the original governmental style. I believe it may have only been the American Revolution that somewhat succeeded and didn't end up in a nightmare scenario. The French Revolution ended up with thousands of people getting decapitated on the guillotines, and it still ended back up into authoritarianism. The Russian Revolution ended up in a murderous regime under the Bolsheviks, and then eventually Stalin coming in there and killing somewhere like nearly 160 million to 100 million people. The Chinese Revolution, the Great Leap Forward under Chairman Mao, 100 million people dead, something like that. So revolutions where, yes, let's get change, let's change in the streets. I am not of the opinion that that is automatically the good thing. I am of the view that it is much easier for things to get worse than for things to get better. That's not saying I'm in agreement with people currently in charge. That's saying that someone coming in and the only thing they have going for them is that I am not the current person in charge. No, that's not enough to make you the better choice. You have to convince people. You have to itemize how are you going to be the better choice. Now, some people over in our sister island, they thought that some other group was going to automatically be the better choice. But we are seeing now that groups that don't have a good plan on what they are going to do once they get into that place aren't necessarily better choices. Things can get worse. Just by the way. Now, I wanted to get in here and play the full context of what Miss Kojo said in her speech. And I think it makes sense to understand where she was coming from and to understand the kind of sacrifice she was talking about when she was referring here. And when you understand it, you understand that really and truly, she wasn't speaking totally inaccurately. But understanding your position in governance, understanding that when it comes to what people hear, it's always going to be the sound bites, and understanding how to curate what you say with that makes a lot more sense. Now, in the sacrifice speech, she was talking about the sacrifice for children to get better and for children to get better grades and etc etc, and she went into her life and the way her parents grew her up, and that there were 8 of them, and once you grew to the age of 12, you didn't get any milk anymore, you had to sacrifice for the younger ones now, etc etc. And it was a good life story. I understand the story that she was trying to talk about. Let me see if I could play a little snippet of that.
We in the government of Trinidad and Tobago have held our commitment as it relates to ensuring that these youngsters go to school and have access to free quality education from kindergarten or early childhood center levels all the way up to university.
As she said, that early childhood level all the way up. Just by the way, again, mindful education, if you are so interested, we are offering pod learning, pod classes from preschool all the way up to CXC, and also private tutoring for CXC subjects. Hit us up over on Instagram.
So many other grants and so many opportunities provided for us. And there are difficult decisions that we have to take, that we must take, not only for ourselves, but the little children who are coming up among us. You hear the cries of everybody who wants everything right now. What are we prepared to do? What kind of sacrifices are we prepared to make? What kind of investment are we prepared to make now so that the little children who are coming up among us will have something to look forward to? And this is something we really have to take into consideration. Everybody wants everything for nothing. Everybody wants everything, but willing to give up nothing. You want a good life now. We all want a good life now. But what kind of investments are we making for the younger ones? What kind of preparations are we making for the...
You know, like when I was listening to this, the idea I was getting is this may have been a good sermon. If Miss Shamfa Koju was a pastor, if she was a woman of the cloth, and she was giving a sermon in a church, this would have been a good sermon. That we must sacrifice things if we want to get things. That all of us, so many people would like to get something for nothing, but you need to sacrifice in order to get. That is true. It is a good lesson for a sermon, for a pastor. But you are not a pastor, at least not in this current portfolio. You are a politician. Your job isn't to tell people how to live their life. Your job is you are hired to make the best out of the country's resources. That's your job. You aren't here to pontificate about sacrifices. I hired you to manage my resources, our joint resources as a country. If I hire what you call those guys to run your stock portfolio, I hire a stockbroker to manage my stock portfolio. You know, I'm getting wealthy out there. I want to do some investment. I hire a manager of my stock portfolio. Your job as my manager of my stock portfolio is to find me the stocks that I can invest in that will make me the most money. If you come to me and start to pontificate about, life isn't always about money, and it's not all about money, Mr. Springer. Mr. Springer, life, the real fulfillment of life is gotten in spending time with your family. I'll be like, sir, thanks, but how my money doing? Because your job is to handle my money. And if you, as my manager of my stock portfolio, are running me into a bust, I'm losing money, and then you're coming to tell me and pontificate to me about the sacrifices of life and I don't want to hear that. That's not your job. As right as your lesson might be, that's not your position. That's not what you're here to do. Exactly. If you start to do that, I already start to ask, but wait. Where my money? Where my money? Imagine, let me bring it to Trinidad, nice local settings here. We might know much about the stock exchange. Well, some of us might know much about the stock exchange, but we know about Susu. Imagine you join a Susu, and when you're ready to collect your hand, the holder of the hand, the house, the casa, however you call it in Susu, the holder start to tell you about, the love of money is the root of all evil, In life, we mustn't devote everything we do to money, Mr. Springer. It's not all about, pass my hand, please. Where my Susu hand? Your job isn't to come and tell me about life. I could go and find a motivational speaker. I attend church services. I can get the pontification. What I'd like is my Susu hand, the money. And that, I think, is the problem that they ran into, especially Miss Kojo here. Because to be fair to her, as she said, listen the entire context of what she said. If you do listen the entire context of what she said, a lot of what she said does make sense in the abstract, if you just take it by itself, yes, it makes sense. Megan Alton, oh, over there on YouTube. You know, I don't usually take in some of the YouTube. My apologies. I'm slow to take in some of the YouTube comments. Megan Alton says, no one likes to accept responsibility. They always seem to deflect answers onto someone else. Blessings all. Okay, but what are our politicians giving up? Exactly. They aren't obviously giving up much. All right, let's listen a little further on.
The younger ones, there are people among us right now who don't have a proper savings for themselves, have a proper savings for their children to go to university. We as a government have to take that into consideration and make the necessary changes and do the necessary things that we have to do now to allow a better future for the children who are coming up. We sit here healthy and strong, looking good, well fed, because somebody else had to sacrifice then so that we can have now. So then why is it so
Yo, Empress,
to sacrifice for the young children who are coming up? I like to always say I came from a family of 8 children. We're all 1 year apart. So I'm 40, the brother before me is 41, the one under me is 39. And that is how my parents did it.
Hiena, just by the way, them old folks was doing the most. Some of these old folks who are out here doing the most. like, 8 children, 1 year up, and that isn't even the craziest you could hear. I know about somewhere it's all kind of 12, 13, 14, 15, and it's a few years just separating them. The oldest is 50 and the youngest is 35, and you're like, how you have 14 children in 15 years? Granny, what going on?
But in the end, at the end of the day, they had to make it work. Same mother and father, at the end of the day, they had to make it work. And there are people who make a cry saying, poor people shouldn't have plenty children. I don't believe in that. My parents said, make the children, train them well, and send them out into the world to be good citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And
you know, just to jump in on Miss Shamfa's side, I actually agree with her statement there, but I think you need to put some qualifiers in there. There are some people who go on about like poor people shouldn't have children. I disagree with that. But poor single people shouldn't have. No single people should have children. I don't think poor people shouldn't have children. I think they should. But you must be in a 2-person committed relationship. It doesn't make sense by yourself. That's suffering. Now, so bring them to suffer then? I don't agree with that. You see, here's the problem I have with that. Some people make it seem like I must be middle class or upper middle class in 2022 in order to have 1 child. And if that is not the case, then the child is going to come into the world and suffer. That is untrue. I like to point out the only reason all of us are here is because the human species successfully, continuously reproduced through the most trying of times. There were people out there having children walking through swamps. There were people out there in the wilderness having children. I'm not encouraging you to go about and necessarily do that. But the point being that children are able to survive in even some of the most difficult scenarios. And no one, well, not no one, but nearly no one in 2021 is so poor as to be poor comparative to the rest of time the world was in existence. Some of the poorest people right now have things better, have better amenities than some of the richest people back in the 1800s. I could assure you, as a pauper now in 2022, you will not go back in time and exchange lives with the Rockefellers back in the early 1900s. You are not going to exchange lives for them. You have a better toilet now as a poor person than the wealthiest person had 150 years ago. That's just the fact of the matter. So if If you are a poor person now and your child comes out into the world and they have to bathe from a bucket and they have to flush the toilet from a bucket and they have to share a bedroom and a bed with their sibling, that is not suffering. Many of us have the idea that if we do not live in luxury and opulence, that we are suffering. If you do not have access to Wi-Fi, you are not suffering. If you do not get a cell phone as a child growing up, you are not suffering. If you never get a laptop, you still are not suffering. That's not what suffering actually is. My boyfriend tells me I need to marry a farmer because I want plenty children. Well, maybe you do need to, Rooney. Maybe you do need to. Empress Rooney says, I would want to be a Rockefeller. That is the sacrifice I will make for my grandchildren. But the point that Miss Kojo was trying to make there, my point to her point, is that I understand it. If you listen the entirety of her speech, I do understand it. I do understand it. The context and every perfectly understood. The problem being, you are a politician. You are a government minister. It's very difficult for people to take this level of pontification and explaining about the need for sacrifices in life, etc., etc., etc. To take that from a wealthy politician that is making the decisions that cause my quality of life to go down. I understand your context, but it kind of doesn't matter. Most times it's not what is said, but how it is said and the time it is said. Like in this case, I wouldn't even say it's how it is said. It's more so the time that it is said. This is coming from a budget where people are saying, listen, I feel like I might be suffering this coming year. And then out of this suffering in the coming year, you come to tell us about sacrifices. And I understand your parents had 8 and you understood the meaning of sacrifices in growing up, and I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that her parents maybe taught her some good lessons about sacrificing and what you need to sacrifice now to gain in the future, and maybe she did some of that, and that's why maybe she may have out of merit reached into a good position in life. Maybe. I don't doubt it. Still doesn't give you the ability to go out there and say that. It still doesn't. And you see, there's this reality in life where there are some people who may have sacrificed, some people who may have done what might seem to be all of the right things, and the way how reality unfolds sometimes is it just doesn't work like that. I thought was Tobago Wednesday, yes, but today isn't Wednesday. We do talk about Tobago on a Wednesday, but today isn't Wednesday, Rooney. Rooney, did you sleep through the day or something? It's Tuesday, Rooney. It's still Tuesday. Now, as I was saying at the very beginning of this, I find when I look at these things, the PNM, the government, sets themselves up for licks. They set themselves up for licks. Like, I could imagine if I was a politician, a parliamentarian, and I am in parliament, and I get to respond to people saying things like this, well, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to enjoy myself. This is the setup for the UNC to sink these members of parliament if they knew what they were doing. Let's see some of the UNC replies to this. One of the main replies that the UNC came out with. UNC Rowley's lavish party while asking citizens to sacrifice. Opposition leader Kamala Prasad on Monday accused the Prime Minister of continuing to disrespect citizens by hosting lavish parties while encouraging people to make sacrifices. In a media release, Prasad said that on October 1st, Dr. Rowley hosted a lavish party for himself and his wealthy friends, paid for by taxpayers at MindFULL, which totally ignored the suffering of the poor and working class. It was a most evil act of incitement against citizens, reminiscent of the behavior of detached tyrants and dictators. This latest provocation comes on the heels of statements from PNM ministers scolding the population. Keith Rowley and his government, this is Ms. Prasad Bisessa speaking, uses taxpayers' money for roses and rosé champagne, but none for paying workers, none for the fuel subsidy, none for road repairs, none for subsidizing utilities, none for children's education, and none for senior citizens. This opulent party is a hateful provocation to the citizens, etc., etc., etc. But here's the biggest problem with that. Here's the biggest problem with all of that. Angostura. It was our party at MindFULL, not the PM's. The lavish party, which the opposition leader Kamala Prasad Bisessa accused the Prime Minister of throwing on Saturday, was actually the closing of a month-long celebration by Angostura. The company in a media release clarified that the event was not state-sponsored, but a private celebration where Dr. Rowley was an invited guest. Listen, you have this whole budget to talk about. You have all of these issues to pick up. You choose a party where you obviously didn't even do the background check to understand it wasn't a state-sponsored party. Like, listen, if you want to lick the PNM on throwing parties, the PNM threw an actual lavish party in the Hyatt, 2 weeks ago? And the PNM threw that out of PNM money. Like, okay, if you want to talk about something, you could bring that up and talk about how the PNM is throwing lavish parties out of the party's coffers. Yes, it is the party's money, but it shows that this party has so much money, even though they are talking about the country needing to save. And this party isn't helping everyone. The party is out there throwing money in the Hyatt, giving money to the wealthiest people while the citizens are suffering. Like, oh gosh, come and talk about something serious. You're talking about a party that Angostura threw. Like, there are better things to talk about. Now, I saw Mr. Indar Singh, who is not usually my favorite parliamentarian, but he brought up a good point. And finally, someone said it out there. Indar Singh tells Scotland, coal not cheap. Couva South MP Rudranath Indar Singh said he felt the need to inform the out-of-touch government that coal is not cheap. This was the point that I was talking about. When I heard this. This minister talking about he still has his coal pot and using that as somehow supposedly being a saving measure. Listen, I like to barbecue. I really like a good grill. I'm just letting you all know. I consider myself something of a grill master. Something of the like. A tank of gas is what? What's a tank of gas now? 23? Anyone in the chat? What's a tank of gas going for now? About $23? Thereabouts? A bag of coals, the small bag, is about $21. 28 as if they're delivering it for you, Rebecca Marie. We out here in looking for no gas truck to come by me. I'll go and pick up my gas. 28 for the delivery. All right, 28 for the delivery. But it's, I believe, $6 for delivery or something like that. So it's actually somewhere down in the lower 20s. One tank of gas could last you months. One tank of gas. Months. I don't know how many of you do any grilling every now and again, or any of you ever watching the grocery and just pick up the bag of coals. You know, those little brown bags that are about yay big, nothing too massive, just about that. Nothing too. S&S Emporium, when you see that you're a chef, you're somebody that is in the kitchen regularly. Maybe we could have a discussion. But yes, those bags of coals, $30+. You pour one, you do this. The bag of coals staple at the top. You pull off the staples and you just do this in the grill. And you probably might get what? A couple quarters, one session of barbecue really going. $30. $30. One session of barbecue. So, Mr. Man that talking about the coal pot. If you cooking on a coal pot, you are going to spend more money in coals than you are ever going to do in gas. That isn't even an alternative. Shamfa, to be fair to Shamfa, when you listen to the entirety of her speech, good night, Tyson. It's been a while. If you were here last night, you would have known where I was. For those of you still asking where I was missing for about a month, thereabouts. I was on paternity leave. I was out there on paternity leave. You know, my daughter was born and I was enjoying that time and, and being very busy and sleepless and etc., 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 etc. But I'm back now. The problem with statements like that is it sounds out of touch and about backward. What books do you recommend on critical political thinking? Jeez. Huh. Lala is spending time to break down the nonsense that man was talking. He was not roasting no breadfruit. I doubt he wasn't roasting any breadfruit, of course, but it shows exactly what Tony the Ambassador is talking about there. It shows how out of touch they are. Thank you very much, Jonathan Charles. It shows exactly how out of touch they are. If you listen to just about everything all of them said, one spoke about going to the movies 3 times per week and about baking ham once per month. And then about macaroni pie as a luxury. Then one spoke about riding a bike to work. Like, sir, what? What? Riding a bike to work and coal pots, where coals are more expensive than gas. Those things, you do not just sound like you are out of touch. It shows that you are out of touch. That means that these people, for one, they don't understand the price of gas compared to the price of coal because they don't even do it. That's not things they pay attention to. They probably have someone that goes and collects that for them. I don't even care. It doesn't bother me. They don't understand how a regular person's entertainment budget functions. For a minister to talk about movies 3 times a week, he obviously is out of touch with how Trinidadians and Tobagonians spend their entertainment budget. We don't spend our entertainment budget as a family on 3 movies per week. Nearly no one does that. For him to talk about baking a ham every month, it suggests he doesn't even know what the average person does as a more luxurious thing. These people could not pick out an option in their head. They couldn't pick out an example in their mind of what normal people might do to save money. You're understanding that's what it says. You're understanding that that's what it says. None of these people could have picked out an example in their minds of what normal people could save money on. They had no idea. ham every month, macaroni pie, cinema every week, coal pot. These are the examples that our politicians, who are supposed to be our representatives in Parliament, use in the year of our Lord 2022. Really, really, that's the example. Listen, I think I would like to consider myself a more regular member of the Trinidad and Tobago populace. I think I could make some examples of how Trinidadians and Tobagonians could sacrifice. Buy less soft drink. Plant a lime tree. Learn to make juice. Squeeze some lime and grapefruit and make juice. Stop buying soft drink. You'll save some money there. Stop buying fast food. Learn to cook a bit more often. Learn to cook some local foods, and let's stop buying some of the foreign imported foods. Let's stop buying fast food as much. Less visits to the restaurant. These are things that realistically you tell an average middle income-ish Trinidadian about, and they might be like, yeah, I do spend a bit of money in the shop on consumer items like soft drinks and snacks. I probably could cut back on that. Yeah, I do buy fast food relatively more regular than I need to. I could cut back on that. These are actual things that could be used. Slow down the amount of time you spend liming. Listen, you probably can't buy rungs for the boys this Friday. That's just the reality. This Friday, there's no after work lime where you go and buy some rungs for the boys. No. You buy 2 for yourself and go home and sip them slowly. Put one in the fridge so it doesn't get warm, and you sip one for about 45 minutes, and the other one you take it out and sip for another 45 minutes, an hour and a half of nice leisure time sipping your beers. None for the folks. I mean it as a partial joke, but this is, if one of the politicians went out there and said this, you'd actually understand, all right, well, this person at least is relatable to the Trinidad situation, to what we experience as Trinidadians. You're talking about ham every month. Nobody does that, sir. Nobody does that. Now, one minister seemed to have it a bit better. One minister seemed to have had it a bit better. Faris, we are feeling it. Price increase, burden. Now, I find this kind of ironic, because Mr. Faris fits the 1%. When Trinidadians talk about 1%, what they mean, there's a kind of racial connotation inside of there too. And Mr. Faris might fit that general connotation better than any of the others. Keith Scotland, Brian Manning, Shamfa Kojo, they don't seem to fit the 1% as well as Faris Al-Rawi. And he is one collecting lots of money in rent, lest we forget. He actually is in that 1%. He's a very wealthy man. And still, this man seems to understand a bit more, at least from the political side, how you deal with these conversations. Being a politician, the pain of adjustment has to be shared, as there is no escaping the reality of price increases, which are impacting everyone, the government and the citizenry alike. This was the message from Local Government and Rural Development Minister Faris Al-Rawi as he contributed to the budget debate in Parliament yesterday. He said he recognized that people didn't want to hear about what is happening in the Ukraine and other countries, and that they wanted to know what is happening here and how their lives could be better. Correct. He said while the government recognized the feelings of the people of TNT, context was important. He said it was known that there had been serious increases in prices everywhere in the world. We, the citizenry, are feeling it in the prices of food, but the government also has to balance the fact that whatever goods and services it is going to spend on will also be more expensive. the cost of housing and construction paid for by the government is more expensive because steel and cement prices are up. When we give social services, hampers, and other relief supplies, those costs are more too. And this budget represents an attempt in a scenario where everything costs more to say, let's shift the burden a little bit. Listen, this little paragraph here was better than everything I heard out of the government otherwise. Everything I heard other than this out of the government, this was better. Because he did several important things. First, he didn't sound like someone up here speaking to people down here. He sounded like he is down here with the people and talking about a situation that we are all going through together. The tone was, listen, I know all you don't care about really what's going on all about the world, but we have to understand the context. Things all about the world are increasing in prices. I know we don't want prices to increase, but we have to understand that the prices are increasing and we can't do anything about it. So just as you have to pay more for things, the government has to pay more for things too. And if the government has to pay more for things, well, we have to cut the budget at certain places. Listen, you could find that is a lie. You could find that ridiculous. You could disagree, but it's a way better argument than saying sacrifice more, than saying get a coal pot, than saying ride to work. You understand? It's way better. You from this statement alone, you could allow people to feel comfortable in the idea, okay, all right, although yes, the prices are going up, we understand this. We understand it's not something that people enjoy. We are not trying to excuse it. We are not saying that you have to find a way necessarily, but we are just saying it's the reality that we are all presented with. Obviously, this is how you do things like that. Going on with what he says, we know taxes hurt. We hear you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, but the government needs money to provide services in the context of all those goods and services, being more expensive. But I am hopeful of a better Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, these are difficult times. Yes, people are hurting and wage negotiations are going on. Yes, global inflation has arrived at our door. Yes, we, the government, have to take a little more here and there, but I am confident of job creation. I am confident that we could improve service delivery. I am confident that we can improve our road conditions and ensure that services are better delivered. I am confident that the municipal police can bring a more safe environment as we move from 772 officers to 1,500 of them in fiscal 2023. Trinidad and Tobago, we hear you. It's tough. Your government is with you. We are prepared to take the lash. We have to. We signed up for the job, but I am here at your service. Here now, listen, if I was one to take political chain up, all now, I in chains. I wouldn't lie to you, all now I in chains. All now I in chains. This, the man is a lawyer, and it seems like he came with a legal argument, nearly a logical argument, to try and convince the population of what they need to do. Ismail Dickey says Faris is a very good linguist and chain up headmaster. He just know how to talk. I don't doubt that. But to me, if you're a politician, the least you could do is learn how to talk. The least you could do. The least. Come on, the least. What he did here was he started off talking about all the negatives. We know taxes hurt. We know the government needs the money. We know things are difficult. We know people are hurting. We know the wage negotiations are going on. We know inflation is happening. We know the government is taking more here and there. He's admitting all of this. But he is saying that all of this is here because We are trying to create jobs, and this is what he went on to say. I am confident of job creation, service delivery, road conditions, and the truth is, he could be lying about all of those. All of those could remain undone. All of those could remain as halfway done as they currently are, and this speech still makes more sense. It seems now that at least you are trying to reason with us. It seems like he understands the idea that the citizens are the ones whose money we are spending. And if we are spending these people's money, we shouldn't be coming to them talking about they should learn how to sacrifice more. No, we should come to them and explain to them why we do need to spend more of their money. That's the only thing. You aren't here to explain how I should sacrifice. You are here to explain how you are spending my money. Who will be the next leader of the PNM? Will PNM win the next local elections? Who will win the next government elections? Will protest solve anything? So many questions, Mr. Subaru 868 over there on Instagram. First off, I do not think that Mrs. Teixeira stands much of a chance of winning the PNM leadership. I just don't think that's possible. I don't know who is going to vote for her in terms of that. Bear in mind, to win the PNM internal elections, you have to think about it this way. You have to get the people most likely to vote in a PNM internal elections to vote for you. What does Mrs. Nunez Teixeira offer that is going to persuade the strongest PNM voters to choose her as their leader? I don't think that is going to happen. Who will be the next leader of the PNM? It seems to me like Miss Dr. Rowley may retain that position. As for the next two elections, I don't know who is going to win. I think it seems most likely that the UNC may not win any election. This is my own opinion. I don't think the UNC is going to win another national elections with the same leader they have, because that same leader has lost basically every national election that she has fought. They have to switch leaders. So that's what I believe. Will protests solve anything? Well, it's according to what protests and what you are protesting. Will a straight-haired person ever lead the PNM? Yes, I think that is more possible than a curly-haired person leading the UNC. In 1986 elections, both Prime Minister and opposition leader were African. Amory Brown, Brian Manning. Who else can lead UNC? Well, the UNC has several options, and one of the things with the UNC is they're a party not as institutionalized as the PNM, so someone could come nearly from the outside, as it were, and take up leadership inside of the UNC and probably lead them to better than they are now. The PNM is much harder to do that in. The PNM is really structural. For you to lead the PNM, you kind of have to put in the time coming up. Paris should start a course on talking and get politicians to attend. I'd rather lies be sweet. Oh, yes. On the issue of the fuel hike, Al-Rawi said while the population had to suffer the burden of 500 million more in fuel cost, the government was going to pay 1.5 billion in subsidy. Again, a masterful lesson in speaking politically. Yes, he highlighted that the population is going to suffer an increase in paying for fuel costs. But he turned it around to point out that the government is still paying a high amount inside there and made that the focus of it. That seems to be a sensible thing to me. People suffering, PNM so and so. All right, well, the thing is, I understand. First off, when you say people suffering, I'd like to know what you mean by that. But I don't disagree that, yeah, PNM could go so, but it's always about who is the next choice. What's the next option? Who else are you going to put in there that you are so confident is going to do a better job? I don't know of anyone that I hold in that high esteem. That I will place them there and be so confident that they are going to do a better job. I'm just not sure anybody like that. They're probably getting higher taxes from increased costs in addition to the ripple effect. Can we take Gary seriously? Well, yes, we should take him seriously. Is he going to win? I doubt it. Is he a viable option as Prime Minister? I think Mr. Griffith has some. He needs to be able to take criticism a bit more quietly before he is an ideal choice for Prime Minister. That's my opinion on that. System need to change first. Well, yeah. The UNC would need a total reform because everyone unhappy with people like Rudal Munilal and stuff. The thing is, the UNC has the ability. The UNC has the ability. If the UNC, like, I think about it this way. If I could have become the supreme leader of the UNC and take over that party, it's inevitable that they win. Like, all the UNC needs to do is find a leader that is able to appeal to a slightly wider group of people. The UNC has something like 16 safe seats. The UNC has the most safe seats of any party in this country. The UNC only needs, every election, the UNC only needs to win like, 8 more seats or something like that. They don't need to win a lot of seats. There are a lot of seats that are automatically going to them. All you need to do is get a way to convince a little more of the population that you are the best leader. And the problem is they could never hardly ever seem to get someone in place that could convince the population of that. UNC's downfall. Let Philip fix it 2024. Okay. Imagine Nathan on live talking about PMGG, then boom, he breaking down the door. Listen, I would be a little worried to talk about PMGG because he is not going to take it lightly. He is not. He is not going to take it lightly, and I think that's a big problem. Personally, this is my personal opinion. Judging just from the outside, just from the appearance, how things look, Mr. Double G seemed like the best commissioner in recent times to me when it comes to the commissioner job in and of itself. However, I found for a person of such an elevated position, it is unbecoming to be arguing with random people on social media. What wrong with Mr. Alexander? He seems to be okay, if he seems so. Like, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but a lot of these people are known characters. What really upsets me is when people are in one political group. They are refused power in that one political group, and they leave and start acting like they left based on integrity. Like, I was an honest person, that's why I couldn't stay with that group. But they refused you power. If that other group gave you power, you would have been a member of the other group. You are not on your own. You haven't created this thing based upon your vision of leadership for the country. No, you created this because it was the only avenue for you to attain power. And that's people that I find really sketchy. You're a known political entity. I remember where you were. I remember you as an activist for others. I remember things you said in support of others. I remember seeing you on a certain party train. And to come now and pretend like you were never there and you were always as some separate upright. No, it doesn't work like that. People have memories. Don't treat us like idiots. Nathan, why are you afraid of talking about one man to one vote? Like, am because I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Sultan. I'm really not sure what you mean. One man to one vote in terms of what? In terms of what? Because in Trinidad and Tobago, we do have one man to one vote. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. People rebranding right in front of your face and lying about the reasons. Exactly, Muzan. Exactly. That's my point. I understand what you're saying. Those were genuine questions, by the way. Yeah, I believe they were. PEA was in all parties, sure. Double G might be the first PM to run the country with just him and those who do anything for power, they are dangerous. Exactly. Exactly. And there's someone over in Tobago in the PDP party. He's currently a member of the PDP party. But I remember this man was a member of the Tobago Forwards. He was a member of the TOP. He was a member of the People's Partnership. He was a member of every single entity that had a possibility of giving him a channel to power. That same man said that we must support the leader of the PDP no matter what. Smite the shepherd and the sheep would scatter. We must support the leader. And then when the leader of the PDP no longer was the person in charge of handing out authority, when the leader of the PDP no longer had the power in his hands, then that person kind of disappeared. They disappeared from that PDP thing and now they are sticking tight with Fali. How am I to take you seriously in that kind of position? You seem to be hunting. You seem to be hunting whoever is willing to give you power. And nah, that's not someone who I see as somebody having integrity in politics. Proportional representation, the first past the post system dividing the people. Okay, I understand that. And I don't disagree with proportional representation. Proportional representation has its benefits. It may have its disadvantages too. But I don't totally disagree with it. I don't totally disagree with it. Like, I that's all. I don't totally disagree with it. The thing is, I agree that the voting system we have creates for problems. But the reality is, every single voting system is going to create for problems. Every single one. All of them are going to do that. Unfortunately, we have the memory of goldfish. That's why politicians can rebrand so easily. Still have to walk do pay bill rose corn wrong the savannah I'm not sure what you're talking about. Man cut the bed. Yes, Leon Amara. I cut the bed, you know. The first step out as a father. As a father, you know, when I had to introduce myself, first impressions with the baby girl. I had to make sure that she saw the sharp features and everything. And maybe after all of that, we can grade back. All right, folks, that's all I have for now. If there aren't any further questions or comments, I will be diving out and seeing you guys tomorrow for the next Mindful Live. Nathan fathering me to death tonight. How you mean? Listen, y'all ain't even see it yet. If you all think I start now, y'all ain't even see it yet. Wait till the point when she start to cry and then you see me disappear and I pick up and you see me hugging and rocking someone here while we talk. And yes, I'm talking. Rooney, I ain't even reached the levels yet. You ain't see fathering yet. Stick around. Stick around. We'll have lessons. Nathan, whenever you decide to have a conversation for us in TikTok about proportional representation, I don't mind that. I don't mind that. We could have a discussion on proportional representation. I'd be happy to see that. Let that man enjoy his pumpkin. Yes, I will. Sure, sure. So yes, that's all I have for tonight, folks. I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live tomorrow at 9:15. I will see you guys then. Peace. Before she started complaining my arms